Once upon a time in the quaint little town of Hilaria, there lived a woman named Matilda, who had an uncanny ability to find herself in the most comical and absurd situations. Matilda was a regular visitor to Dr. Peculiar's office, not because she had any particularly pressing medical issues, but because her adventures always seemed to lead her there. One sunny morning, Matilda woke up with an inexplicable urge to do something out of the ordinary. She decided it was the perfect day to go to the post office and mail herself a banana just for the sheer hilarity of it. So, with a banana in one hand and a postage stamp in the other, she marched down to the post office, where the postal clerk, Mrs. Hootenanny, gave her an amused and bewildered look. After successfully mailing the banana, Matilda realized she had no plans for the rest of the day. I need an adventure, she thought, her imagination running wild. She remembered the quirky charm of Dr. Peculiar's office and decided to pay him a visit. She heard that he was known for his eccentric bedside manner and unique medical advice. Matilda strolled into Dr. Peculiar's office, and the moment she entered, she was greeted by a sight that could only be described as a whimsical wonderland of medical oddities. The walls were adorned with framed X-rays of vegetables, and the receptionist's desk was shaped like a giant pill capsule. A large fish tank in the corner was home to a family of rubber ducks that swam around quacking in perfect harmony. Dr. Peculiar himself was an eccentric figure with a handlebar mustache and a lab coat covered in polka dots. He looked up from a desk piled high with rubber chickens, whoopee cushions, and assorted rubberby novelties, and greeted Matilda with a grand, exaggerated bow. "Ah, welcome, my dear. What brings you to my domain of delightful absurdity today?" Dr. Peculiar inquired in a melodramatic Shakespearean manner. Matilda giggled and replied, "I'm here for an adventure, Doctor. You always seem to have the most unique experiences, and I wanted to see what amusing advice you might have for me today." Dr. Peculiar clapped his hands together with glee. "An adventure, you say? How delightful! But of course, my dear, I shall provide you with the most extraordinary prescription for laughter. We shall embark on a quest to find the world's silliest hat, and I have just the map to lead there." With that, he produced a map that seemed to be drawn on a bedsheet and handed Matilda a pair of oversized clown shoes to wear. They set off on their zany expedition, with Dr. Peculiar leading the way, juggling beanbags and occasionally stopping to make a rubber chicken lay an egg, much to Matilda's amusement. Their quest took them through a park where squirrels were dressed in tiny top hats and bow ties, and into a bakery where they met a baker who spoke exclusively in puns. "Don't you love a good laugh? It's the yeast I can do," he chuckled. As they continued their journey, they encountered a parade of penguins dancing the che-che and a shay-che and a street performer juggling flaming marshmallows. Matilda was having the time of her life, laughing and smiling from ear to ear. Finally, after a day filled with nonsense and hilarity, Dr. Peculiar and Matilda arrived at a shop that was rumored to sell the world's silliest hat. The shop was called Ludicrous Lid Emporium, and the sign on the door read, "If it's not absurd, it's not for us." They entered the shop, and Matilda's eyes widened as she beheld an array of headwear that defied all logic and reason. There were hats shaped like teapots, hats with propellers that spun wildly, and even a hat that looked like a miniature circus tent, complete with tiny acrobats swinging from the top. After trying on countless hats, Matilda settled on a hat that had a pair of googly eyes that wiggled with every step she took. It was the silliest hat she took. It was the silliest hat she had ever seen, and she couldn't stop giggling as she wore it. With her new hat firmly in place, Matilda and Dr. Peculiar made their way back to the doctor's office, where they celebrated their successful adventure with a dance off against the rubber duck family. The ducks wiggled and waddled, and Matilda twirled in her silly hat, all to the accompaniment of Dr. Peculiar playing the kazoo. As the day came to a close, Matilda realized that her quest for a hilarious adventure had been more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. Dr. Peculiar had once again proved that the most unexpected and absurd situations could bring the most joy. And so, with her new hat and a heart full of laughter, Matilda bid farewell to Dr. Peculiar's office, promising to return whenever she needed a dose of silliness. She walked out into the world, a little bit wackier and a whole lot happier, embracing the knowledge that life is best enjoyed with a sprinkle of absurdity and a pinch of humor.